This is every Esper in One Punch Man ranked from weakest to strongest. First up, at the absolute bottom of the list, we have the artificial mutant, Sluggerus. This hideous abomination looks like Squidward after he turned into a snail. Created to serve the House of Evolution, this guy was killed by friendly fire from the Beast King while he tried to fight Saitama. Sluggerus died too quickly for us to know his disaster level, but he was most likely a disaster level wolf. The only Esper ability we saw from him was telepathy. Thanks to this, he knew immediately that Kamakuri had been killed while trying to retrieve Saitama. Just above him, we have the Tsukuyomi Spy. Tsukuyomi is the same organization of psychic researchers that experimented on Tatsumaki when she was a kid. This guy infiltrated the Blizzard group, but he doesn't seem to be especially strong or anything like that. We know that he's an artificial Esper thanks to the scar on the side of his head. He can levitate and survive being slammed into a wall by Tatsumaki. That's about it. We caught a glimpse of some other Tsukuyomi minions when they tried to recapture Tatsumaki as a child. We never saw what they could really do since little Tatsumaki slaughtered them all instantly. Next up, we have Empty Void. And while he's certainly more of a monster ninja than an Esper, in the original version of the Ninja Village arc, his genjutsu was impressive enough to make the cut. Void even described it as being dependent on psychic waves. His illusions were potent enough to fool the senses of Flashy Flash, an S-class hero who is specifically trained to resist visual tricks. The power seems to prey upon the target's fears as opposed to being that man's personal design. Although this ability was enough to leave a target vulnerable to attacks, it wasn't shown to deal any damage on its own. From there, we move on to the rank 133 C-class hero, Esper. We first met this young hero during the Monster Association raid. Apparently, he scored terribly on the Hero Association's exam, but was taken in due to the rarity of his Esper powers. He wears a special helmet that's supposed to amplify them, but it was only after the helmet was damaged that we got to witness Esper's true power. After seeing Tatsumaki use her powers up close, Esper claimed that imaginations beyond his control started coming to mind. He was suddenly able to destroy an entire city block worth of buildings and shape the rubble into countless pointed projectiles. When Nyan tried to escape, Esper anticipated the move and shifted his approach. The disaster-level dragon monster was caught off guard by the power of this low-ranking C-class hero. Suddenly, the attack became a spiraling vortex of rubble that Esper had a lot more control over than he previously let on. This was so powerful that Fubuki sensed it while she was underground in the middle of her dangerous encounter with Overgrown Rover and thought it might be her sister. Even the C-class hero Food Battler had to wonder if Esper was on the same level as Tatsumaki. In reality though, this was nowhere near Tatsumaki's unrestricted level. Esper also passed out due to the strain of unleashing too much power. This is the only time we've ever seen Esper fight, but after Saitama's fight against Tatsumaki and Tsukuyomi's attempt to capture Psychos, Esper's behavior was very suspicious. He insisted to his fellow heroes that Tsukuyomi was nothing but an urban legend and a completely ridiculous rumor. He had what seemed to be a well-prepared alibi that pointed blame towards survivors of the Monster Association. He also has a brand new helmet to replace his old one. With Esper powers being such a rarity, where could Esper have possibly gotten this sort of technology if not for Tsukuyomi? And if you look very closely at his face when his helmet was destroyed, you'll notice that he has stitches running across it. Observing other Espers use their powers might be how he gets stronger. We can definitely expect more from this character in the future. Up higher, we have Fubuki. Now, Fubuki's placement on this list doesn't really do the character justice. She may not be as much of a powerhouse as everyone will get to later, but she is easily the most versatile Esper in all of One Punch Man. Fubuki's powers first awakened when she was 5 years old, and this was for the sake of protecting herself from her sister Tatsumaki. Fubuki is well known for leading the Blizzard group, which is a faction of B-class heroes. But this isn't the first time Fubuki has been the leader of an organization. Back in high school, she was the president of the Society for the Research of Special Powers. And unlike the Blizzard group, every one of their members was an Esper. Although, just lifting a human would have been a difficult task for them. Meanwhile, Fubuki's telekinesis was strong enough to lift an 18-wheeler truck. That's around 30,000 pounds at least. Fubuki was more than 200 times stronger than her vice president Psychos. But even so, they managed to defeat a radical Esper group of adults known as Invisible Hand. And that group later became a subsidiary of theirs. At the time, Fubuki was pretty psychotic and rather cruel. Her only desire was to surpass Tatsumaki and stand at the top of the world. But at some point, Fubuki's demeanor shifted and she stopped trying to do this. Even still, we've seen her do things that no other Esper has. When they were in high school, Fubuki sealed Psychos' powers with a kiss. She saved Tank Top Master's life by transferring some of Bomb's strength to him. She's been shown to sense other Espers, but this skill isn't very accurate. She was able to remove the age-related pains of both Bang and Bomb simultaneously. She can see visions from another person's mind. Her ego was strong enough to break free from Do S's mind control. She was able to stop the thermal overload of Genos' core. She has access to psychic binding to trap and keep targets in place. She is capable of telepathy. She can create psychic barriers for herself and others. One of these was strong enough to save Bang and Bomb from taking any damage from a point-blank blast from Overgrown Rover. Above her, we have Apollo. This creepy guy is an artificial Esper and Tsukuyomi agent. We haven't seen much from him just yet, but he didn't have any trouble overpowering Fubuki. If he was an opponent she could handle, Tatsumaki's presence wouldn't have been necessary. We've seen him fly, create barriers, and restrain targets. His psychic strike allows him to target the back of an opponent's neck to knock them out. Apollo seems to have something against natural Espers, and believes that they need to go extinct. He boasts about artificial Espers being far more balanced. Evil Eye was a member of the Monster Association with an unknown disaster level. But seeing as he wasn't an executive member, we can assume that he was a disaster level demon, which usually takes about 10 A-class heroes or 1 S-class hero to be defeated. Evil Eye had no trouble lifting 3 skyscrapers with his telekinetic powers. He could also fly. His name and the source of his power are owed to Gyoro Gyoro embedding the eyes of monsters killed by heroes into his previously weak psychic body. Murata explicitly stated that Evil Eye is stronger than Fubuki, but he also admitted that the monster was created as a way to show off Tatsumaki's strength, which is why he was defeated so easily. Gyoro Gyoro was the disaster-level dragon Esper puppet of Psychos, and the figurehead leader of the Monster Association. Psychos perceived Gyoro Gyoro to be stronger than even Elder Centipede, the creature that survived a fight against Blast and later did the same against Metal Knight, Metal Bat, Bang, Bomb, and Genos. Gyoro Gyoro's abilities include flight, psychic barriers, telepathy, strength detection, and gravity manipulation. We've seen it increase the gravity of a specific area by 300 times. Against weaker targets, it's been able to trap them in a telekinetic cube and reduce the size until they're destroyed. Gyoro Gyoro's true form increased both its size and power output. Higher up, we have Psychos. She was able to remotely control Gyoro Gyoro from 1500 meters away and exuded enough psychic force for it to be one of the Monster Association's strongest members. She can do anything Gyoro Gyoro could, but much better. She can even shoot energy beams from her eyes. It's said that Gyoro Gyoro can't even begin to compare to her power. But most impressively, Psychos possesses the extremely rare ability known as the Third Eye. With it, she can glimpse into the future just like the late fortune teller Shiba Bawa. However, this ability also drove her towards insanity and a desire to exterminate all non-Espers. Despite having her power sealed by Fubuki when she was 17, at the age of 23, Psychos is stronger than her former leader. To be fair, Fubuki was the one to capture her after the Monster Association was destroyed, but by then, Psychos was severely injured. Just using her powers was enough to endanger her own life. And on top of all that, Psychos is easily one of the smartest characters in One Punch Man. Dr. Genius is close to 100 years old and had at least 96 perfect clones of himself. His most destructive creation was Carnage Kabuto, who he couldn't control at all, and was weaker than Super Alloy Darkshine. Psychos, in the span of 6 years or less, was able to create Monster King Orochi, and kept it reasonably obedient, a monster that would have required most of the S-Class heroes to work together to be defeated had Saitama not handled it himself. It's thanks to this ingenuity that Psychos had access to an elixir that dramatically increased her Esper powers. With Psychos out of the way, we can move on to the top 3 strongest Espers in One Punch Man. At number 3, we have Garyuganshu. This 22-foot disaster-level dragon general of the Dark Matter Thieves was Lord Boros' right-hand man. He claimed to be the #1 telekinetic in the entire universe. Unfortunately, he fought Saitama, so we didn't really get to see his full potential. But when it comes to the 2 abilities that we did see, telepathy and psychokinesis, no character comes close. Most telepathic abilities only allow simple sentences to be shared. Meanwhile, this guy was able to remotely command their forces. He even had a full-blown back and forth conversation with Saitama. His psychokinesis is explicitly said to be even greater than Tatsumaki's. This is because he is able to totally remove the friction between objects and air. According to Murata, this allows things like rocks to move at sub-light speed. If Tatsumaki were to try and do the same thing, her output would be too high. The increase in temperature caused by friction and pressure would cause the rocks to evaporate. So although Tatsumaki can move huge objects, there is a limit to how fast they can be thrown. Our second place spot goes to the Psychos Orochi fusion. Merging with Monster King Orochi brought Psychos' Esper abilities to a whole new level. Not only did she gain the tremendous power of the Monster Association's strongest member, but she also gained power from God. The output provided by the latter was enough to unsettle even Tatsumaki. When Tatsumaki created a barrier to protect herself, the fusion inverted it, and Tatsumaki struggled to disable it. A combination of Tatsumaki's ridiculous output and the power Psychos continued to inject began to crush the small Esper. But Psycho soon realized that even as she was being squished, Tatsumaki was still holding back. A single beam attack from the fusion was able to cut through the surface of the Earth and raise a colossal disk of oceanic crust. But to be fair, it's debatable as to how much of this was thanks to Esper abilities. Regardless, her power only grew as her roots continued to absorb energy from the planet. It took the combined teamwork of every S-Class hero on the scene to finally take her down. But at number 1, we of course have Tatsumaki. This 28-year-old pipsqueak is the number 2 S-Class hero, just behind the man who saved her, Blast. Admittedly, Tatsumaki's list of abilities isn't the most extensive. She can fly, create barriers, move objects, bind targets, and has minor telepathy, enough to convey a short and simple message to her sister. But Tatsumaki's true claim to fame is her unparalleled psychokinetic output. Tatsumaki is a natural disaster waiting to happen. Her hero name, Tornado of Terror, comes from the fact that she can casually create massive twisters and storms. She can cause seismic activity beyond a magnitude of 6, and can literally uplift an entire city. If it wasn't for the Monster Association taking hostages, she would have destroyed the ghost town Saitama lived in immediately. She uprooted the Monster Association's underground base while shielding all the heroes that were still inside. Whether it be the S-Class criminal Speed of Sound Sonic throwing explosive shuriken, or the Dark Matter Thieves dropping countless explosives over the ruins of a city, Tatsumaki can send projectiles back to their source, if not with even more force. The reflexes needed to do that sort of thing are pretty crazy. She's taken meteor-sized rocks from the ocean and thrown them as projectiles of her own. In terms of durability, being exposed to a gravity increase of 300 times the normal level was like a light massage to her. Her psychic barrier can be enormous when she wants to project more than just herself, big enough to envelop a major portion of Z City. And this is something she can maintain even when unconscious. If she inverts the ability, it can be used to keep things contained instead. With Psychic Binding, she's been able to grab hold of someone almost a mile away and drag them to her location. She tossed the entire Blizzard group with enough force to embed them into the side of a building. Something so trivial that she doesn't even consider it an attack. When she subjected Saitama to the same thing, she was able to lift him a few feet off of the ground. That might not sound like much, but given how notoriously difficult it is to move Saitama, this is a major feat. And by the time she tried that, she already expended too much of her energy. All throughout her battle against Psychos Orochi, Tatsumaki proved her superior Esper skills and know-how. She created a psychic decoy of herself and even invaded Psychos' body without being detected. This is made all the more impressive by the fact that she fooled the monster with this twice, even after Psychos used Orochi's ability to perfectly copy the technique. Even in the face of the fusion's most devastating, widespread attack, Tatsumaki evaded the attack with only a bit of her dress being ripped. Moments after regaining consciousness, Tatsumaki turned the enemy's base into a giant spear. She then coated the whole thing in her glowing green power. She made it drill all the way down into the Earth's upper mantle. That's at least 255 miles deep. The only reason Tatsumaki struggled at all against Psycho's Orochi was because of all the other heroes holding her back. Without them, the threat would have been dealt with very quickly. Amongst Espers, Tatsumaki is truly in a class all her own. I cannot wait to see her use her full power in an all-or-nothing fight someday. One said that in most cases, Tatsumaki would win against Mob from his series Mob Psycho 100. But when Mob gets serious, not even he knows the answer. So the best Esper competition Tatsumaki has isn't even from the same series. But if you'd like to see more One Punch Man videos like this one, then let us know in the comments, along with what you think of our list. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.